Welcome to chapter 62 of Strength Culture's Quantum Lifting podcast, where this is the first episode of the quarantine podcast, where we're all coming live from our houses. Jamie's from the office at the gym, he's quarantining at the gym, but this is how we'll be doing the podcast going forward. The goal with the podcast is that obviously people are going to have a bit more time to consume content. So we will be pushing our podcast still. We will also be pushing a fair bit of YouTube content, Instagram content, keeping you guys in the loop with where we're at during this period. And also just because we feel that people will have a lot of time to consume content in this period. So I know Jamie's got a few YouTube videos coming coming up soon. What have you got planned for us, YouTube-wise?
Yeah, so well, let's just quickly do a recap because it has been a little while. Obviously, we're here with Pete. If you're not viewing this on YouTube, Pete's here, and Jamie B. It's Jamie B's return since we talked about lobsters squirting jizz on each other or something.
That was
episode
like
7.
2 years ago.
Yeah, but Jamie B is back. But
first 10.
Yeah. We threw out a free home training program called Quarantine Culture, which went absolutely gangbusters. So then Jamie was like, well, maybe we should do a free running program as well. So Jamie's just written one and we've just launched that. So both of those can be downloaded if you do find yourself at home without any training equipment. Both of those can be downloaded from the website. Just click on the Quarantine Culture tab and put your email in the field that you want to, either the running program, the strength and conditioning program, or the home training program that Didier wrote. And then also, we're just going to be using this opportunity. Obviously, the gym is closed for those who aren't in Australia. Australia's government pushed the forced closure of pretty much the fitness industry as a face-to-face service. So our gym was closed on Monday, the 24th. For an indefinite period of time. So we've had to pivot our way out of physical face-to-face training and push ourselves into the online space as hard as possible. The four of us, the four coaches, we don't want to give up on what we've built at Strength Culture. Even if it is a 6-month closure, we will still be there on the other side in some capacity. We just need to make sure that we can use these next few months to continue to build our brand, continue to provide as much value as possible so that on the other end of this, we are still there and can continue to build what we know is capable of this company. So for all those that have given us support so far, bought merch off our website, for our members and clients that have kept their face-to-face rates rolling for as long as possible with their financial turbulence as well with their own jobs. Obviously, the job market as a whole is a little bit up in the air in a lot of industries. But for everybody that has shown us support so far, thank you very much. We will continue to push content, as Charlie was saying, across all of our streams over this period. And we're also in the works of building out some downloadable content from our website regarding a little bit more coach development sort of stuff. So obviously we have our coach development program rolling at the moment. But Charlie and I are thinking about doing a Zoom seminar for about $50 for 3 or 4 hours of training and RPE-based programming structures. And then I'm sure with the other coaches, we'll put together some more content. So just keep an eye out over the coming month. We're gonna act pretty fast on this because we do need financial support to keep our business rolling for obvious reasons. With a closed gym, it makes it very difficult. So we will act fast. So make sure you keep up to date through all the social media streams. But that's pretty much the recap of Strength Culture currently. Does anyone else have anything they want to say? No. Cool. All right. So today is chapter 61 of Quantum Lifting. 62. We have Peter Colvin, the man who will eventually, I think, just take over this podcast and run it himself. But Pete, do you want to introduce what we're actually going to be discussing today?
Well, sure. Well, I think I was talking to you guys about it, because we were going to put the podcast on hold and stuff for a while. But obviously, in the wake of what's happened, I thought the topic of fear was really important and one to look at, and not only talking about experiencing fear and how to address that when it comes up, but also, what we can learn from the experience. And what some strategies are for effectively dealing with fear, getting out the other side, what getting out the other side even looks like. when we're in the groups of fear, it's very difficult to imagine positive futures, basically. And so I think it's just really important. And I mean, obviously, the strength culture gym shutting down was one of the first real things to go in terms of the lockdown. And I know that no doubt all the coaches there were, feeling a lot of different things. And I was interested to hear, because I think, at this time also sharing some of our stories about how we've been feeling in the wake of everything is really helpful, because people feel really isolated as well a lot of the time, and people feel like no one really understands what they're going through, whereas the reality is a huge percentage of the world knows exactly what you're going through, and we just sort of need the courage to talk about it, really, because then people feel understood. So I suppose, first of all, over to you guys, what's fear looked like for you in your life since this has all come up?
Well, me personally, I'll start.
Yeah, this is where we're going to learn how to do this. We'll do the hand. We'll do the little hand thing. Charles, you're up.
Well, me personally, I was fearful on probably for about a week and a half up until Wednesday of potentially there not being a gym to return to. But obviously, after discussing for quite some time the last few days, we've realised that that's not going to be an option. So that put myself at ease quite a lot, or quite a bit. But that was very fearful or scary. So I immediately started going, what the hell am I going to do? I don't want to work for a boss. I immediately thought I'll become a cavoodle breeder. So my mind was going into all these fucking spirals of God knows what. Like, even, I don't mean Jamie and myself discussed it. Like, we can't actually do anything else.
We don't have any other skills.
We've got undergrads. So I was like, I met a cavoodle breeder the other day, and he was like, it's booming at the moment because everyone's buying dogs because of they're in quarantine, so they can look after a puppy. So I was like, man, I'll get into cavoodle breeding, buy a few cavoodles and start breeding them. But
where do you get
that was probably just
cavoodles from? Like, how do you start a cavoodle farm?
Well, we can't use Barney because he's had his balls chopped off. So you find, I haven't gone that far into the research. I don't think that's an option anymore. But I was like, maybe I could do that on the side project. But that was more just to, I think that for me, with the fear of not having a gym to go to, was leading my mind to wonder to other options of what I could potentially do. So it was sort of like, that was giving me some comfort or some ease. But obviously knowing that after just letting the couple days sink in, and then accepting that potentially the gym may be shut for 6 months and anything less is a bonus, it sort of just made it a lot more easy to just deal with. And now I'm sort of feeling back to normal again, just getting used to life this way. But yeah, that was my experience.
Yeah. I think
fear.
Yeah. So obviously very similar initial thoughts with Charlie. I would say the biggest cloud that was over my head through the initial phases was more so that the last 3.5, 4 years of work is going to end. And for myself as the owner, that burden felt like it was on me. However, again, after speaking to Charlie and also the other boys, my parents, and my girlfriend, I pretty quickly snapped out of that and realized that the last 3.5 years of work, if it was to end, is me waving the white flag. That's me giving up. And I soon realized that that's not what I want to do. It's not what I want to see on the other end of this. I don't want this to be over. And we discussed this off air there, but being in a self-employed position with the potential to pivot into online pretty aggressively in some capacity. I know our total revenue is not going to be anywhere close to what we were doing, but to at least support ourselves in this next potential 6 months is actually a really good opportunity for us. And after that initial down, fearful time of thinking that it's going to end or thinking that all the work's going to go to waste, I've actually now, as Charlie said, accepted the fact that we're shut. I can't live if we think about two parallel universes running along and one doesn't have COVID-19 and this one does have COVID-19, there's no point me stressing about what the other universe is doing. Like, that path is finished. It's cut. I'm off it. This is now my reality. The reality is a little bit stressful and fearful right now, but I know that with the brain power within Strength Culture, we will be able to at least pop out on the other side. Not sure what we'll look like, not sure the size, not sure our reach or whatever, but I know that we'll be in a very strong position to hit the ground running. And accepting the fact that this is now the reality is probably the biggest comforting feeling that I have created, or I'm now feeling. Charles.
Yeah. And Charles.
Oh, your video is frozen.
It's not
No,
frozen
oh, wait,
on
the video.
ours.
The video just froze on Jamie's head for like 10 seconds. Oh, I was going to say, I had a quote because I was reading the Stoic book before and underlined it. It's very fitting for that. And we've discussed it before. When you fight reality, you lose 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So the quote was from Epictetus, and I'll just read it out because I underlined it. Epictetus suggests that those who fall into circumstances they wish to avoid are those who are suffer misfortune, by which he means that much suffering comes from a disconnect between what you want to happen and what actually happens. Or as the Stoics would say, what is in accordance to nature as opposed to contrary to nature, which is exactly what you just said, Jamie, about we would like the gym to be open, but unfortunately it's not open. So the more that we resist that, the more discomfort we create for ourselves.
Definitely.
Well, and that's actually indeed the quote by Epictetus that's tattooed onto my arm as a reminder, which is
do not on your arm.
Yeah, well, no, it's not the same quote, but it's the same sentiment, which is do not wish things to be as you would want. Wish them to be as they are, and all will be well with you. And I really remember actually talking to Byron Katie. I showed her that quote, and she looked at me in the eyes. It was a moment I'll never forget. And she said, what is what you want. What is what we want. So when we're really clear, she said, then we'll understand that whatever is happening serves us, basically, or can serve us if we're open-minded enough to see it. And if you meet everything as if you had wished for it, it completely changes the way you see things. So it's like, if you treated the situation of, which is a difficult thing to do, obviously, and particularly people lose their jobs, lose their homes, all these kind of things happening, that's not an easy ask. And I'm not saying it would be, but when we're able to get to a place, which is challenging at times like this, to go, well, what if I had wished for this situation? What does that mean? How could I react or behave or deal with it? Which is, I think, almost what you guys are doing right now, because you're the whole thing, Buzz, you were talking about was the pivoting bit, using this as an opportunity to change things up and pivot into, you guys pivoting more into an online space actually sort of opens up the world of strength culture in a way that maybe you guys hadn't even considered before.
Yeah, we probably wouldn't have considered it before without this situation.
Well, I think it's given us a huge opportunity. The amount of people that I've spoken to that I've never even spoken to in the last how long, that have actually started to notice the stuff that we're putting out more so, and it's, I think, is a huge positive. Like it's forced us to make content that we wouldn't have made prior in a higher volume and a much quicker time space. It's just like, I think it's made it's forced us to make it a positive. Like Jamie was saying, the fact that we had the lockdown imposed was, I think, a positive thing, because the limbo was doing my head in. Like, I'm sure it definitely was doing Jamie's head in. It was doing Charlie's head. Like, we couldn't actually. It was much easier to focus on like what is going to happen rather than like what is right now and what can I do about it. There's a good little. We're going to go down the quote train. Actually, like it.
Love that.
Before you jump in, I just want to, that is probably another big turning point for myself mentally as well. And I'm sure a lot of people will be in that feeling of being on the cliff before anything actually tangible happens. And for us, it was for about a week there. We knew we were going to get closed. We weren't sure when it was going to happen. We were trying to be as proactive as possible. But anybody that is on the cliff per se with their job or whatever, more than likely that stress will lift once the jump happens. And whatever that is, whether or not it's your boss turns around and say, you know what, I can't pay you for the next period, or you know what, unfortunately your job is gone, or you know what, you can take leave or whatever. Being on that cliff was far worse for me than the actual fall of jumping off and being closed and forced closure. So sometimes it's needed to actually get that stress lifted off you. And I understand that most people will be going through a pretty bad jump when it does happen, but it actually helped all of us in that moment. Charles.
Back to
the
the thing.
Buzz had a quote.
I had a quote. Yeah. Okay. His hand wasn't up.
No, he did put his hand up. Then Jamie interjected. Then you put your hand up. Everyone forgot Buzz, but I didn't, Buzz. I remember
Thank
you.
Pete. It's appreciated. Appreciated. I'll quickly read it out because I think it's fitting with what Jamie was saying as well, and with the limbo. Like asking the question is everything going to be okay? I subscribe to Seth Godin's blog. It emails it daily, and this is a good one. He always puts out little snippets, so I recommend anyone to get onto it. They're like real short little blog posts he does. But I found this one good. Like you pose the question, is everything going to be okay? That depends. If we mean, is everything going to be the way it was and the way I expected it to be, then the answer is no. The answer to that question is always no. It has always been. If we mean, is everything going to be the way it is going to be, then the answer is yes. Of course, if we define whatever happens as okay, then everything will be. Given that everything is going to be the way it's going to be, we're left with an actually useful and productive question instead. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
I feel that was super powerful. Like the previous week, like we had no idea if it was going to be okay. We didn't know when we were shutting down. And we couldn't do shit, which was to be left powerless in that situation and to have whatever semblance of control you've got, like just ripped out of your hands. It's sort of like, it's shattering. But now I feel like that we've had an opportunity to say, all right, well, the gym's shut. Like we can't solve it.
What are we going to do?
What are we going to do about it? Charles.
I got two things. The first thing was that in that period, all the speculation was doing my head in too. Because I'm trying to stay positive. Like, it's only going to be a few weeks. He said, but then people, it's going to be way longer. It's going to be this. It's going to be that. And it just was like really doing my head in. So for me anyway, accepting 6 months is like a lot easier to just cope with everything. And anything less is a bonus. The second thing was back to fear. I don't know if anyone's seen the Yes Theory where they challenged Will Smith to do a bungee jump out of a helicopter. And Will Smith's massive on all this stuff. And his YouTube channel is actually really interesting as well. But the first time he ever went skydiving, he said for the hour before, all the way up in the plane, he was freaking out, fear, blah, blah, like scared shitless. And then he said that moment where he actually jumped was one of the most peaceful moments of his life. And he was like, all that fear was just a manifestation of nothing. Like there was no reason to fear the outcome. It was an illusion. And a lot of the times fear is just an illusion, because if you accept everything in the present moment, it's usually going to be okay. And that's sort of what your quote was sort of stipulating there.
Yeah.
Well, there's because I got a few quotes lined up for this, but as I always do. But there was one by an author, Andre Gide, and I really liked it. It says there are very few monsters who warrant the fear we have for them, which I think really speaks to it. The monster you have in your mind is almost always much more frightening and terrifying than what actually you actually deal with in reality. And then have any of you guys ever heard of Susan Jeffers' book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway?
No.
I've heard that
Yeah.
quote
Okay.
before, but I don't know.
Yeah. So she's got in the book, she's got 5 truths about fear, which I think were really helpful to remember. The first is the fear will never go away as long as I continue to grow. So it's the very idea that fear is a natural outcome of living a life where you're challenging yourself continually. And sometimes those challenges arise because we subject ourselves to them willingly, and other times they come at us like this current thing. But we can't expect to not feel fear, and we'll always experience it while we're growing. The second one is the only way to get rid of fear of doing something is to go out and do it, which is exactly what you were talking about with the jumping off the ledge, having that moment. You've actually done it. The only way to feel better about myself is to go out and do it. Not only am I going to experience fear whenever I am on unfamiliar territory, but so is everyone else. So it's a universal experience. And pushing through fear is less frightening than living with the underlying fear that comes from feeling helplessness, which I think is almost what you guys were talking about. In that period of the lead up, there was a sort of a sense of helplessness, most likely, that you guys all felt. And that's actually a lot more terrifying than actually dealing with what comes your way. Because I think the really interesting thing with fear is, I mean, and again, it speaks to the whole idea of courage with fear. There was a Nelson Mandela quote I really liked, which is, I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. So, you know, fear is an inevitable experience for all of us, and particularly, you know, at this time more than ever. And it's not, you know, it's not realistic to expect that you're not going to experience that fear, but it's, I suppose, how you deal with it when it comes along is the question.
Yeah, well, that's exactly that concept where I said, for us to fail and for that fear to be real, we have to give up, and we're never going to wave that white. This situation won't force us to wave that white flag. So it is a courageous act for us to just say, fuck it, we'll take the hit us, let's go. So I really like that concept, that idea that you just said, where the courage is actually overcoming it with an action rather than just facing it, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, very true.
Yeah. And and I mean, there was the other bit I was actually interested to ask you guys, whether you'd also experienced you'd had a lot of anger coming up in the process, because that's very often a cover for fear. Anger tends to be a very secondary emotion that comes up, because basically what's been happening, we've been seeing it in the world a lot at the moment, is that when we're in a very fearful state of mind, our reptilian brain, so our flight or fight function, overtakes our higher brain, right? So
yep.
It's, you know, as you guys know all too well. And then in that state, we behave very irrationally, and we tend to have a lot less empathy. And I mean, I just think the classic example is the toilet paper binge buying.
The brawling.
People aren't doing that because they're bad people or anything. They're doing it because their brains have been completely co-opted by fear, and they're operating out of a place that has very little empathy, very little reason, and it's just a very primal reactive place. And that's similarly the people going into supermarkets and yelling at the staff. That's coming out of fear. Yeah, Jamie.
I can give you a personal experience of this that happened yesterday morning, and how much my reptilian brain took over. The 3 or 4 weeks of the anger tsunami that was, and anybody that knows me, I'm a pretty lightheaded person. I don't really I don't really get too emotional about too many things. Can't really annoy me. Some of my nicknames growing up would have turned some people into monsters, but for me, it was just like nothing. It's just who I am, and I'm not very angry. I would not call myself an angry person, but Wednesday night, obviously a fair chunk of our business has walked out the door here at Strength Culture. We have a lot of support from our clients, and we are very, very thankful of that. However, when you close the gym, obviously a fair chunk of business is going to walk out the door. And our payments normally go through on a Thursday, and we have 2 fortnightly cycles that occur, and it just flips on a Thursday and a Thursday. And on Wednesday night, when our payments were meant to be taken on the Thursday, on the Wednesday night, my debiting company sent me an email at 6:11 p.m. and said, your payments will not be processed tomorrow. And that was literally all it said. And it had a link, and it said, fill out this thing explaining that you're still providing services for the payments you're going to be taking for tomorrow. At 6:11 p.m., I'm like, I need this money to go through. We've already lost X amount of revenue from our weekly cycle. I'm not going to make any money this week. I don't have a business. And it started to just build on me and build on me. And I woke up in the morning, and I waited for 90 minutes on a wait call for the debiting company. And then I finally got the pickup, and I was like, what's going on with the payments? Like, I need this to go through today. Like, my business is falling apart, like all this, blah, 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 blah. And I was just getting angry and more angry. And then the woman was like, well, it was government mandated that all Australian fitness businesses' payments get paused. And I was like, well, that makes sense. And then she's like, it will be processed within 48 hours if you complete the form on the email, which I had already done. And I just shredded her. And I was like, I'm not yelling at you. I'm yelling at your company, as if you couldn't just put those 2 bits of information in the email. And I was fucking, and I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not yelling at you. I'm yelling at X company. And then at the end, I wrote them an email, and I said, because you guys will be sitting on the phone calls for 90 minutes with 5,000 gyms and PTs, here's the email you should have sent out to everyone. I wrote them the email, and I sent them the email, and I said, here's your support. And then I went and bought a second computer screen in an emotional anger state, because I'm like, well, I'm going to have to fucking set my desk up. The gym's going to be shut. I've got no money. And then the screen didn't actually work, the new screen that I bought. So I got even more angry and frustrated. And then I just called my day there, and I said, fuck this. And I went home, I went to bed. I woke up today, fresh start, reptilian brain down, and I'm feeling a lot better today. But yes, I definitely felt the anger wave, and it took over me for about 12 hours.
And I mean, that's what you actually described there was a perfect example of a few different things. One is obviously the anger that arises out of being in a very fearful and triggered state of mind. Also, the other thing, I'll never forget this. I went to a workshop once, and the guy running it made a comment. He said, when you're triggered, you're no longer sane. So you have to do whatever you need to do to get yourself out of that state. And so, because you're not going to make good decisions anymore.
Yeah, I did.
And I mean, what you described there also was the fact that when you called your day, went home, you probably did a few different things at home to help yourself calm down a bit. But I don't know whether you talked to someone or
I spoke to Laura, Had dinner with Laura.
And so that's exactly a good example of you actually doing something, because you have to. The only really way when you're in those states of mind is to do something to really shift it, because your brain's so co-opted in that moment by the fear and the anger and everything that you have to gear shift. And whether that's going for a walk, having a break, talking to someone you care about, writing in your diary, meditating, listening to music, like there's all kinds of strategies that will help you to calm down. And it was like with me with Latrobe the other night, they shut down my phone program because they're basically closing down the uni completely. And I was fine. I still had work, but I knew my casual staff, I had to let them go until we could start up again. And before I talked to any of them, I called Mike, my husband, and I just had a little moment on the phone to him. of like, they've shut me down. Ah. And then I immediately felt better. Like I felt calmer. I felt, more normal. But I think that's the key thing, because oftentimes, for instance, when we get angry, we don't realize that it's actually fear talking. We'll be angry and we're actually fearful or hurt or vulnerable. And then the thing with anger is to act out, right? Anger has a very active nature. So the movement with anger is to try and sort of do something. But
Yep.
weirdly, when we're in that state, it's actually the opposite of what we need to do. We need to step away and give ourselves some time to get into a better state so that we're making better choices.
Yeah,
Which is you ended up doing.
I could definitely agree. And even just having, so we've started a Facebook, or we didn't start it. We already had a Facebook community. It was pretty stagnant. I'd call it dormant. But we had the Facebook community that we just opened up. We're like, fuck it. We're just going to open up this to everybody right now. There's about 250 people in there right now. And that is something that we're trying to do, is to have that. Jamie B started it with the pivoting. We've got another one today at 3:30 because we're filming this on Friday. But that's just an open forum for people to talk about their current situations and to talk about what proactive and positive things they're doing. Because I've definitely felt it, mainly speaking to Charlie. But when you do speak to somebody about the situation, but you speak about it honestly and openly and let the feelings come out, and actually and this is where, like, we've always said that strength culture and the people here, they probably look at, well, not me, but they probably look at our members and think, oh, we're just big weight lifting buffheads. But at the end of the day, like, we are, we're very open and emotional, openly emotional people here. So if you do need to reach out, our clients know this, but if anybody, like, join our Facebook community, speak to us, speak to anybody really, but try and be open and try and be honest with how you're feeling, because getting that out and actually putting it out there to the universe, so to speak, it definitely helps and comes back tenfold in more positive flow of feelings and emotions. So speak to people.
How about you, Buzz or Charlie? Can you relate to that experience of feeling really overcome by the fear and what you've done to deal with it?
I feel like I can pinpoint the changes in my, I guess, emotional states about this all. I was very, like, a few weeks ago, I was pretty heavy in denial because of the Europe trip I was going to be going on mid-year. So I was just like, we'll be right. We'll be right. We'll be less right. No, we're fucked. So, and then that pretty much turned into, that to me, it was like, we'll shut everything down. Like, I'd hear about it and I was just like, And then for me, it hasn't been anger or fear. I feel like I've just not wanted to talk about it because I feel like a lot of the talk was speculation, and that was making me anxious and tired. So that's what was happening to me. So people ask me, hey, like, how are you doing? Are you doing all right? Are you doing all right? I'm just tired. Like, I'm just tired of it all, to be honest with you. And I feel a lot of it was the speculation. I haven't had any moments of, like, proper anger. Like, today I was a bit, today I got a little pissed off, actually. Just, again, from the limbo. So, like, I'm not making any, like, political, like, statements, but it's just like, there's so much inconsistency and unknown at the moment. And I'm just like, well, I don't know what to do. Like, do I see, like, my girlfriend, the kids? Do I not see her? Like, what's going on? Like, people are going to work. Do I do this? Do I do that? And I just sort of, like, again, it's like, fuck it. Like, I can't really do much about it. So I feel like I've just, I just surrendered control. That was about it for me. It was just a bit of anxiety today. That's probably about it, just through the decision-making process. But I don't think anything else has been, like, anger, because I feel like I just surrendered pretty early. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, the other bit I would say, what you're describing is you might have had a more depressive reaction to it in what you would call the more so you've got the spectrum, right? So you have a more anxious kind of, and that can lead to sort of heightened feeling, right? And you can also go into a more shut down place equally when sort of we feel overcome. I'm not saying I don't really know your own experience, but does that sound more correct for you?
It definitely feels like, I wouldn't say depressive in the pure emotional state. I would say depressive, like more like if we talk about like depressant stimulant, like I was just flat. You know what I mean? Like, I was just down, just a little bit lower. Like the motivation to do things was lower. Like, you know, to stick to macros or even train, I was just like, I can't be bothered. I wasn't feeling a certain type of way about anything. It was just like very, very here, like very neutral about it. Like there wasn't much.
And what you're describing is more of a numbing reaction. Which is a very natural and normal, again, reaction to feeling quite overcome at times by a situation. People usually either go into a more heightened state, which is, I think, Jamie Smith, where you went. You go into a more active, do things like get stuff done, blah, blah, which is probably going to manifest more as anger. Whereas what Buzz is describing is more of a shutting down. And I mean, that might sound a bit more dramatic than it is. It's not like you're not lying in the bed crying all day, but you're basically, you've lost your motivation, you know, like you feel disconnected. And again, that's a very, very normal reaction. I mean, on a level, I did the same thing because I was being really consistent on tracking my nutrients to a degree with Didier. And he called me yesterday and I'm like, I'm just not doing it right now. I don't care. I'm not. I just don't want to. And he's like, you know, that's
more than accepting of that.
No, he was cool. He was fine. But how about you, Charlie? Can you speak to any of that?
The only time I really got angry was on Tuesday night watching fucking Scott Morrison talk, to be honest. I know Buzz says I'm going to go political, but I don't see the issue with talking about what he said, because at the end of the day, it affects us. But it just, the inconsistencies with it all. It's like, I can have 5 people at a wedding, but then retail shops are open. It's like, well,
there's so many. There's a video on
Kat Barlow. I sent it to Pete.
Fuck me, that is the most accurate thing ever.
It's just the reason I didn't go with it. It's just because I find it very, like, it's, for me to say like political stance or whatever else. It's just like, all right, I'm gonna say first is communication skills are fucking horrendous. Like, that's the first thing. The reason we go into it's like, all right, lock it down. But he's like, all right, unemployment is gonna go. Either people are gonna die from coronavirus, or people are gonna die from, you know, things that will lead to from unemployment, you know, or suicide or worse off. I guess that's why, like, I put myself in those shoes. What would I do? I've got no fucking idea. Like, it just seems like it's just, that's the hard part. You know what I mean? That's why I'm not like straight down here. Fuck Scott Morrison. Like, it's just too hard to pick one. You know what I mean? Yeah. If we could lock it down and there'd be absolutely zero ramifications for anything else, go for it. But I feel like it's very hard. It's just very hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think what Buzz, you were talking about before was a good point, because again, that comes back to the whole stoicism thing again, of focusing on what we have control over and what we don't have control over. Because of course, when we're focused on things that are outside our control, it's gonna feel like stress, because we literally, that feeling of helplessness will become heightened. And there's a really good meme going around at the moment. I've shared it with a couple of, I think both Charlie, Jamie Smith, I shared it with. And it's like, what I can't control, what I can control. And I can't control if others follow the rules of social distancing, the actions of others, predicting what will happen, other people's motives, the amount of toilet paper at the store, can't control that, how long this will last and how others react, can't control any of that, right? What I can control is my attitude, turning off the news if it's getting too much, finding fun things to do in lockdown, how I follow the recommendations, limiting my social media, if that's something that we're getting a lot of negative stuff off, my own social distancing, and my kindness and grace. So again, I mean, that comes back to the whole Stoic point, which is, you know, tend your own garden. Like, just be worried about what you're doing, because whatever's going to happen with the virus and the lockdowns and everything, we only have very limited impact on. But we do have a lot more power, and where we can make a real difference is what we're doing in our lives. And like, we're hopefully doing right now while we do this. But
So that's where I feel like I made the transition. Like, last week was very speculative. This week was reality is hit. What do I have to do? One, make sure my clients are happy and still exercising, and they will have a plan to go with. Two is like making a period of aggressive personal and professional development. This is what we're talking about, the pivot. That has helped me a lot. It's almost been like real motivation. Like, yeah, I'm in lockdown. I'm going to fucking read. I'm going to train. I'm going to eat well. I'm not going to let this, you know, because there's nothing else I can do. It's either that or do what I did on Saturday, and I ate Magnums. I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to just fuck it. I'm just going to eat 8 Magnums. If I do that every single day.
I had McDonald's last night.
Hey, what you get?
Large quarter pounder meal and 10 nuggets.
I actually
and I watched Fight Club. It was on TV. Crazy movie. I watched it years ago. Good film. Psychological thriller.
In module 2 of the coach development program, I talk about front-end business systems and back-end business systems, and about a 5-slide series is on Ray Kroc, the guy that pretty much built McDonald's. And I'm like, this is the real Ronald McDonald. And I went back, because you know when you film something and you don't really know what you spoke about, and then you go back and watch it back or something. I know Jamie B maybe would have done this with the Rocky Balboa program he just wrote. But I went back and I literally spoke for about 4 minutes on just McDonald's and why I appreciate McDonald's so much, and it's the #1 restaurant in the world and all this sort of stuff. And I was like, what the fuck am I doing? So I can appreciate it. Good work. Fucking love
McDonald's. Yeah, but if anyone's seen The Founder, he talks about that. All that. Does everyone watch The Founder?
Yeah, great movie. I'd recommend it. It's on Netflix.
You too. I would recommend that in this quarantine period, you go and watch The Founder.
That's your homework.
It's a movie about the creation of McDonald's, and it's good.
It's good.
Very good.
Cool.
Very good film.
Crazy.
So, I mean, I suppose the big thing, and I think it's actually really good testament to what you guys have done anyway, because I mean, the funny thing is with fear, I was talking to a really good friend of mine before this, and she was talking about, you know, when you talk about fear, it's important to talk about what's on the other side, because it's very easy to get caught up in how do you deal with the fear, but what does sort of not fear look like? And I think you guys are sort of modeling quite well at the moment what not fear looks like in a lot of ways, or feeling the fear and doing it anyway, right? Or like being courageous, because it's like, okay, well, we can't stop the lockdown. Like, we can't stop the gym from being shut. What can we do? How are we going to show up most effectively? How are we going to keep looking after ourselves? How are we going to, like, you know, bring our best selves to whatever we can do? How can we, you know, also be forgiving to ourselves when we get, you know, we do get really triggered, like you did, Jamie, yesterday on the phone. You know, you had your blowout, and then you felt a lot, you know, you managed to calm down, but like all that stuff is natural and understandable. And then on the flip side of that, it's like, well, what does it look like? And again, that's in that sort of higher functioning brain. It's like empathy, solutions, you know, sense of peace, well-being, like excitement even at the challenge, because, you know, probably more so than any other time, all of us we can get excited about the fact that it's actually very hard to predict the future right now. So that doesn't necessarily have to go to a scary place always. That can go to a really excited place, because then what possibilities does that open up? when you're on track for a set vision, right, you can get very narrow. And then if something hits you, you can either get really damaged by it or it's adaptation. It's what you guys talk about all the time.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's sort of that where we spoke about it at the start, but it's like that's no longer the reality. Like this is the new reality, and it's opened up, as Jamie said, all this online and forced us to be a bit more quicker in frequency and the quicker turnover of new content and all that sort of stuff. Like that multiplied by a 6-month period could open up any possibility for us as a business and individuals as well. Like Jamie's bought 5 books. Like who knows? He's shown an interest in finance and trading and stuff. So like, who knows where any of this could end up? This could be the best thing that ever happened to any of us as an individual. But right now we're in that initial, it's like training. It's like you get the dip and then you get the super compensation. Like there has to be a positive on the outside of this in some capacity somewhere. And there will be without a doubt. And if you can take control your controllables, stoicism, control what you can, forget about the rest. If you can do that with the right people around you, I'm sure that anybody will come out of this in somewhat of a better position.
And it also really the thing I've taken about it is that the things you worry about don't happen. It's usually the things that you've never even thought would happen that happen. So worrying's a bit like, I'm sure Jamie, like the things you were worried about that were challenges to strength culture are now completely sidelined.
Yeah.
Like you never saw a pandemic coming.
No, we were literally, so we had a 2-month period where we didn't grow for no reason. Coming out of the New Year period, we're stuck at 120 coached members and 13 or 14 in-house members, 134 people. And we just didn't move. And I was like, man, we've got no marketing and all this sort of stuff. And I started reading books. I was about to hire a business mentor, all this sort of stuff. And then literally within 2 weeks, it just got flattened by this COVID thing. And I was like, holy shit, like what we were actually worried about. Obviously, like no one's going to foresee a pandemic, but yeah, 100%. The things that, yeah, there's always going to be something to worry about. So,
yeah.
But yeah. That's it. Charlie, you got anything to add?
Leanne said to me, if it goes, let it go. If it comes, let it come. I think that's a Buddhist teaching. That's what I got to add.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Love that. All right. Are we done?
That's the ending.
I think we are.
I think it's been about an hour.
Done.
It's a big, hefty podcast.
Yeah.
I found a new love for puzzles.
I hate puzzles.
Love that for you.
I sat down the other day with Nikita, and it was after a day of work, and I just looked at the puzzles with the pieces. And I'm like, I can't do this.
You got to sit there. Once you get one, you just get addicted.
I sat there for about 10 minutes just staring at the pieces, man. I just gave up. Done.
Challenge yourself to find one piece.
Just one. In my pure addictive personality, I actually got addicted to puzzles last winter with Jared, and I used to leave work early so I could go home and puzzle. So
I can't even go downstairs. I can't even go downstairs to the kitchen without stopping and putting a few pieces in.
Yeah, crazy. It's good fun. Look, all right.
Yeah,
all right, are we done? We're finished?
Okay, guys, wrapping it up. Yeah.
If you want to download any of the free programs, they're in the link tree. If you want to support us, there's some merchandise. Otherwise, just share our shit. That's literally it. Done.
We'll see you next time.
Take it easy, guys. Look after yourselves.